Morning Express. It is now time for the political point. Just 1 day, 23 hours to Kenya's historic repeat presidential election. Tensions across the country continue to rise as political parties continue to take their hardline stances. We'll be speaking about this and the events leading to this election. But first, my panelists here in studio. I have Senator Ledama Olekina, who is the Narok Senator, as well as Irungu Kangata, who is the Muranga Senator, as well as the Deputy Chief Whip. Gentlemen, many thanks for joining us in studio.
Thank you. Thank you.
Now, foreign diplomats are warning the political class against driving the country in the wrong direction. Speaking in Nairobi yesterday, the more than 20 envoys said solutions to Kenyan challenges can only be addressed by its constitution, urging that only Kenyan institutions can now postpone the elections. It is a conversation we have been seeing developing for quite a while. Let me get reactions from a panelist here in studio. And let me begin with you, Senator Ledama. Foreign envoys have weighed in on the situation in the country for quite a while, but they are now reaching out to politicians across the political divide. Stop driving the country in the wrong direction. Your thoughts on what they said yesterday?
First of all, let me be very honest, and I say that it's about time that we actually saw the foreign diplomats coming in and trying to make clear where they stand. Because there was an article in the New York Times, I think in the New York Review, that asked a very good question and said, who is cheating who in terms of the interest of foreigners in Kenya? When you look at the American foreign diplomat, or rather the ambassador, I would have expected him to be a little bit tougher. But there's a lot of interest in terms of the Uhuru presidency. So there's no way that he can actually come out strong against Uhuru. And the only thing that I can agree with him is that the solutions to the Kenyan problems are with the Kenyan people. But let no one cheat you that really their interest is for us to have any other different, any other different results apart from the Uhuru presidency. There's a lot of things that we cannot lie. We've got huge military interest. Before Obama left the presidency, he had approved a $418 million grant to Kenya, which was to go to the military. Before the August election, Uhuru announced that there was an American company which was going to be building the road. And that's a lot of foreign interest. So the idea is this. I think we as Kenyans have got to look at our own solutions. And really, the buck stops at Chebukati. And Chebukati today needs to call a press conference, and he needs to call off this election, because really the price that we're about to pay is more than really anything being set on stone, like the law being set on stone. So I think in terms of the foreign envoys, I commend them for coming out, because some of us were concerned that they kept quiet. In fact, Raila raised concerns that when Akombe resigned, Akombe was in the heart of the commission. She knew everything that was going on in the commission. When she resigned, they kept quiet. You know, when Chebukati spoke about not being able to deliver a free and credible election, they kept quiet. So yesterday, when they actually saw that we are serious, that we are not going into this election, they had to come out and say, gentlemen, find a solution within your constitution. And I can actually say that it is good that they did that, because let us be reminded that the law is not cast on a stone. The law is not made to destroy man, but to help man achieve his goals.
And it's great that you say that, because part of what they said was advising leaders to seek legal redress if advised, as per the constitution.
And that's what I'm saying. Chebukati, when you look at the constitution, there are so many ways that will allow us to be able to postpone this election. When you look at devolution, you know, there were timelines which were set for things to be implemented. They were never implemented. Nothing happened. So I don't think it's wrong, or it will be a huge political or constitutional crisis if Chebukati today calls for a press conference and says, gentlemen, I am the returning officer, the only returning officer. I am calling off this election. It is not safe to have this election. I'm going back to the Supreme Court, and I'm asking the Supreme Court to explain to me what steps I need to take in order to be able to safeguard the future of this country.
We'll come back to Chebukati, but Senator Kangata, your thoughts on what the foreign envoys said yesterday, considering they also touched on Jubilee, saying it is not a good time, it is not advisable to sign into action the proposed election laws that had been discussed in Parliament.
Well, the envoys have only reiterated what is provided for in the law, which is very clear that we have a constitution. Article 140 of the constitution is very clear that once you have an election that has been nullified, you must conduct that election within 60 days from that date of nullification. So they never said anything new. The only thing that I can mention, the political undertone, is that Raila Odinga is about to be taken before the ICC. We know, yes, of course, it goes without saying. They are laying ground to take Raila Odinga before the ICC.
For what?
For no, I can tell you the reason.
What? Tell us.
Western nations are very forceful when it comes to ICC matters. That court was established by them with a view
America is not part of
I know, I am aware, but you know, it is the greatest funder. It funds that court to a very huge tune of billions of shillings, isn't it? So I can tell you, as a matter of fact, even the people who were taken before the ICC in 2013, there was a role of the envoy. So now, because Raila Odinga presently is doing things which are extra-constitutional, things outside the Constitution. He is the one who went to court. He obtained a court order, and that court order directed elections to be held. There's no way you can extend that date. Then on what basis do you then proceed and refuse to participate on elections? And you don't refuse to participate on elections peacefully. You start doing agitation, you start causing your people to start evicting other communities from your strongholds. All right. So therefore...
No. Do we have any evidence of that?
No, you heard very well. Raila Odinga went to Bondo. He made a statement urging his people to be restrained because he knows that is happening now. There are people who are being attacked in Luo Nyanza, people who don't belong to those communities. It is happening. Of course, what he said is a decoy, of course. I can tell you for free. There were even intention for Raila to be blocked from traveling to the US, but I think they withdrew, so they give him the last chance for him to recuse himself and make amends. Be that as it may. The point is, number one, they reiterated a constitutional provision, which is you must hold elections within 2 months from the date of nullification. May I reply to some of his comments? He has said that there is a way one can violate the Constitution. I can tell you there is no way.
Not violate.
No. One, there is no way. That's number one. Number two, he said that there are instances where some constitutional timelines regarding devolution were not met. It is not true. We do not have a single moment so far that the Kenyan Constitution has ever been violated since its enactment in 2010. He should cite examples, say this is the example, cite which section or article of the Constitution has been violated, and I can tell you zero. What now they are proposing to do is to push this government to violate the Constitution. And once we do that, we shall trigger a constitutional crisis of very huge proportions.
All right, let's speak of the Constitution, even as you respond to that, Mr. Ladama, because the High Court today will rule on whether to compel Raila Odinga to participate in this election. His name is already on the ballot. What is the legality, first of all, of NASA's argument?
First of all, before I comment on that, I have to actually respond to what Kangata said, because it is not right for Kangata to lie to Kenyans that Raila Amolo Odinga has committed crimes that is now being taken to the ICC. Contrary to the fact, the people who should be taken to ICC are people like Matiang'i. Matiang'i rose up and said that he's Chinkororo #1. Chinkororo is equivalent to being a terrorist. When he stood up and he said that he is willing and ready to tell the police to turn the other way, and he's citing examples that the Chinkororo are fighting the Maasais, I take that really seriously. And I think if anyone is to be... Let me finish. I allowed you to talk. If anyone is to be taken to the ICC, the first person should be Matiang'i. The second person who should be taken is a person who is ordering the police to turn this country into a police state. Today, when you traverse this country of Kenya, Even yesterday when you're going, you meet with about 20 or 30 truckloads carrying GSUs, all heading to Nyanza, Migori. I mean, seriously, Luo life matters. You cannot come here and tell us that people who are dying, they should die. There are people, Raila went and told people to tone down because you know that people are being killed in that area. What is happening is very, very clear. And I hope, my brother, you can be able to substantiate some of your claims. Because what is happening is that there are reports by Human Rights Commission that have clearly said that X number of people have been killed. And X number of people have been killed by the police since the post-election violence.
Can I reply?
Kangasa,
yes.
please.
First and foremost, there's nothing wrong with a person saying he's a Chinkororo. Even him, I suppose he's very proud to assert that he's a Maasai Moran.
You cannot equate a Chinkororo and Maasai.
Allow me. Look here.
You can't.
We have the so-called Maasai Morans. We have the so-called Chinkororo. In our region, we have the so-called Kikuyu elders. There is nothing wrong with associating yourself in either. That's number one. Number two, it is true. We have police people who are going to Luo Nyanza. But why fear? Unless you have something you are planning to do wrong, why fear police presence? You know, and by the way, they are not only going to Luo Nyanza, they are even coming to Murang'a. And I do invite the police to beef up security in Murang'a County. There is nothing wrong, unless I'm planning to do something that is weird. Number three, what is happening in those regions? We have some people who are storming police station. Surely, you expect to go throwing stones at a police station and you don't want the police people to protect themselves. That is illogical.
All right. Yesterday, Senators, we had CS Fred Mating'i speaking on matters security before the elections, and he says very well, security has been beefed up in areas of Luo Nyanza, the coastal regions, beefing up security for these elections. But he has also given a very stern warning to anybody who tries to intimidate those who are willing to vote in NASA strongholds, those who will intimidate IEBC officials as well. This is for you, Senator Ledama, because we have seen reports, even on the media, of IEBC officials being threatened, having violence meted out against them in NASA strongholds. The same kind of violence that you're castigating against your supporters. What do you have to say on that, especially considering that this violence was perpetrated by NASA supporters?
First of all, let me say this. I think it's actually double talk and double standards for Mating'i to come out and say that he has beefed up security in certain areas and not all areas. You know, when you start profiling this country and you make people think that certain areas are more prone to violence than other areas, it is actually wrong. Right now in Narok County, what is happening in Narok County, the police should be taking a keen interest on that instead of beefing up more security to Luo Nyanza. The Maasais and the Kipsigis in Kimindet ward, even until now, are still fighting, you know, and the police are not there. I requested for a statement in the Senate. Instead of even them working clearly towards solving that problem, they are now diverting. This is a red herring. We should be focusing on what is happening instead of diverting our attention into other things. So whatever Mating'i is saying, first of all, I have lost all my respect for him. Because as a security minister, you ought to be neutral. You cannot come in and say, I'm going to profile certain areas. Because what Mating'i is doing is profiling. The incident that happened in terms of the IEBC official, it's regrettable. You know, I don't believe that anyone should be attacked in any way when they're carrying out their duty. I completely don't believe that. But when you make the environment so hostile, when you profile individuals, when you see young men carrying on their businesses or boda, and you attack them, you make people hostile.
But isn't it only right for security forces to beef up security in these areas?
No, you can beef up security, but you have no right to come and beat me up. That Luo man who was carrying on his business, he could even be Luo or Kikuyu, he had a boda. He had no right to be beaten. So the problem is this, by saying that we are beefing up security in certain regions, that is actually profiling this country, and it is wrong. And that is why we're saying the current situation in this country is very hostile. And that is why we're calling on Chebukati as the returning officer to call a press conference today and call off this election. You know, this country is more important to us than a law. A law is not made to destroy man. A law is made to make the man live better.
All right.
So there's no way you can say that one action is justified and the other one is not justified. The police should actually be there to just maintain peace. They are not there to attack.
Among the things that, CS Fred Mating'i mentioned is the fact that there is laws, rules and regulations that govern public order, rules and regulations that govern picketing and demonstrations, among them signing of particular forms, informing authorities where the demonstrations will be taking place. And they have defended some of the cases of police use of excessive force as just retaliation to what NASA supporters themselves
That is not
begin.
true, Michelle. It is very wrong for Mating'i to come in and cite the Public Order Act and use it selectively to benefit him. Currently, what we are witnessing, and maybe Kangata can tell us this better, is that I know for a fact that there is a law against anybody in this country wearing military clothes or police clothes. Right now, the Jubilee brigades, the Jubilee administration, they are all going around the streets wearing military-like clothes. Yesterday, some of the Jubilee people say that we are Nairobi business community. They were parading themselves in Uhuru Park wearing American military clothes. We cannot turn this country into a country whereby you choose to apply certain rules and not apply others. When he goes out there and he says, okay, you've got to cite this Public Order Act, and you've got to fill the forms. When you look at the Public Order Act and you look at the Constitution, they are completely different. Because Article 37 gives us the right to picket. And that is what we are in need.
All right, Kangata, please.
When you look at the Constitution, it grants various rights. But very few rights are what we call fundamental rights, which are absolute. Most of them have statutes, which statutes create certain limitations. And that is clearly provided for under Article 24 of the Constitution. So therefore, for instance, we have the right to own property. But of course, you have to buy that property. You have the right, the freedom of movement. But of course, you have a law governing the so-called trespass. You may have the right to life, but you also have the penal code, which provides that in case you murder, in case you treason, you can as well be killed by the state. So therefore, we do not have any so-called absolute right. All of them have some limitations. So therefore, the so-called Public Order Act is a limitation to the right of demonstration and picketing. Otherwise, you may find yourself having people demonstrating and blocking hospitals, blocking ambulances, and we shall have havoc in this country.
All right.
So my point is, no, allow me to finish. You have talked so much, my brother here. My point is, we cannot allow people under the guise of demonstrations to go marauding and creating chaos in this country. And Mr. Raila Odinga, by the way, no. Of course, surely, as a society, even the state. Look here, for instance, Raila Odinga is fairly a popular politician. I concede that. But how come it is only people in certain regions, in fact, only 3 counties, who are violently demonstrating? I have not seen a single demonstration in Kitui, in Makueni, in, I don't know where, even in Mombasa, where Raila Odinga got almost 90% of his votes. We have seen in that region, it is certain politicians who are inciting the people. We have seen, for instance, my colleague, Senator Outa of Kisumu. We have seen the former deputy governor for Kisumu. They are the one who are causing this chaos. And therefore, the police are entitled to arrest these leaders and have them charged in a court of law.
All right.
Now, number 3. My brother, I want him to convince the public now. Under what circumstances can you urge Mr. Chebukati to proceed and violate the Constitution? We are all here on the basis of the Constitution.
Let me respond to that.
Article 140, sub-article 3 of the Constitution is so clear that you must conduct elections within 60 days. So what these people want us to do, we violate the Constitution, and then we cause a constitutional crisis, and then the government is going to fail or fall. We are the one who passed this Constitution. We all agree to abide to it, and they obtain that court order pursuant to that Constitution. And I'm very surprised. Anyone imagining that we should even think of violating the Constitution, and that person is not even receiving any backlash or even any sanction from anyone. That's why, by the way, I belong to the school of thought. There's a conspiracy in this country.
let me respond to
Before
that.
you respond to that, let me just
Because I
perhaps
don't
ask you,
wanna
Senator
forget.
Kangata, why is Jubilee so confident of going into this election with the chairperson who has made it very clear that he cannot guarantee a free and fair election?
Mr. Jebukati on Sunday revised that position. He said very clearly, I saw that article in the Sunday Nation, and he said that indeed he has undertaken some steps which have remedied the problems which are obtaining last week. That is what he said in Sunday Nation. Number two, yesterday, the envoys also reiterated that point yesterday. They said there have been some steps that have been undertaken and which have cured those problems, which include, number one, this guy who is called Chiloba, my former classmate, is now on leave. These other people who are impugned by NASA, they are no longer part of the team that is going to deliver the new election. They also include, by the way, this date, the so-called 26th of October. We were opposed to the extension of the election date. Originally, it was intended to be held on 17th of October. What happened? Raila Odinga pushed for the change of that date. So it means this guy, he says, I want this. We grant him. He changes. He wants this. He is granted. He changes. So we have a situation where he is continuously keeping on shifting goalposts. He reminds me of the song by Bob Marley where he was saying, give me a yard. And then I say, no, I want a mile. You are given a mile, and then you insist, no, I want another mile. So we cannot stay here forever.
Ledama, please, under what grounds should Jebukati resign?
Very good.
Call off this
Let me first of all, there's one thing that I'd like to state is that facts are very stubborn. My brother here challenged me to cite certain devolved functions which have not yet been fully devolved, which the Constitution gave clear timelines. Number one, health. Number two, agriculture. Those two functions are supposed to be fully devolved. They are not devolved. That's
can you cite the Constitution?
Wait, that's number one.
Can you cite the Constitution, the provision of the Constitution?
Let's go to the issue of Chinkororo. When my brother says that he can equate Chinkororo with the Masai Moran, the late George Saitoti gazetted Chinkororo, Al-Shabaab, and other militia groups as terrorist groups. Okay? So you really cannot. When you come here, please come with facts. Now, let's move into the other issue that he's talking about, the issue of the Constitution. In this Constitution, this election which we're holding this election under Article 143 of the Constitution, which clearly states that following a nullification of an election, the election has got to be conducted, a fresh election. The term here is fresh election within 60 days. I am of the view that today, or rather tomorrow, when the High Court rule on the case that the Honorable Haron Moore has filed, they will agree with me that a fresh election means fresh nominations. In my view, and this is what I'm about to tell my brother here, and also Kenyans, I think what we ought to do, since this election is not being held under Article 136 of the Constitution, which is the article that stipulates on when the election is going to be held. My plea is that if Uhuru Muigai Kenyatta and William Ruto really care about posterity, really care about the future of this country, and they are 100% convinced that they won the election on the 8th of August, and that they will win the election again when the election is held, then we should invoke Article 146 of the Constitution. They should resign. Uhuru Kenyatta should resign. And then since there is no term, Ruto should also resign. And then we should swear in either if we follow Article 146, we swear in the Speaker of the National Assembly. If there is a case in court that is challenging the validity of the Speaker, then let's go to a more neutral person. Let us swear in the Chief Justice, and then now we set neutral grounds. Let's allow these people to go in. They'll be out and they'll be out. They will not be using public resources. In fact, there was a case yesterday that there was a ruling, I think yesterday, that now pointed out very clearly, and this ruling was cited in the Supreme Court decision about the use of that advertisements by the Jubilee administration, that it was illegal. So for us to be able to have equal grounds, a level playing field, let Uhuru resign, let's save this country from going into the dogs, let us call off the elections, and then within 60 days, let us put everything in order and let us hold fresh elections with fresh nominations.
Before we get there, Senator, let's look at the facts and the legality of some of what NASA is asking for. First of all, when the Supreme Court ordered a fresh election within 60 days, are we saying that the Supreme Court then erred in that decision?
No, no, no.
Because legal minds say it was impossible to carry out a fresh nomination and an election within 60 days. That is the first question. Secondly, when the election, a fresh election was called within 60 days, NASA came up with its list of irreducible minimums, none of which called for a fresh nomination exercise. That seems to have been an afterthought on the part of the opposition, NASA. So what seems to be playing here? Is it just a political game? Is it, you know, a legally based solution?
First of all, for me to allow my brother Kangata to speak, I have to tell you one thing. The Supreme Court did not err in them determining that the election has got to be held within 60 days. It is something which is anchored in the Constitution, Article 143. I think what went wrong, and this is what I believe went wrong, what went wrong is with IEBC. When Chiloba interpreted that decision of 2013, or when he took the Constitution and looked at it and he said, the election which is being contemplated here is only for the two candidates. That is where the mistake came in. I think what a fresh election meant, fresh nominations. So it is not NASA who came in and said this. I think it's an interpretation, and I think the IBC are the ones who misinterpreted the Constitution, and also but they were probably aided by the decision of 2013 by Chief whatever. Now, Justice Willie Mutunga. And then the second thing is that we looked at the decision of Maraga. We went through the things that Maraga said went wrong, and we created our irreducible minimums. We requested IEBC to make sure they meet those irreducible minimums. IBC has not met them. My brother Kangata here alluded to the fact that IBC has made changes. He actually even quoted the envoys talking about these changes having been made. The server has not been opened, okay? We've never seen that server. There was a court order to open the server. It was never opened.
But you were given read-only access?
No, it wasn't. I mean, you know very well
look here,
what happened.
Look here.
So
you see, the point is, the point is, you are talking of servers. You want them to be opened. For what reason? That's number one. Because they relate to an unqualified election. If you want to access
servers... It was a direction of the Supreme Court, Kangata, to be fair.
Pardon?
It was a direction of the Supreme Court that the servers be opened.
No, I am saying that relates to an issue that is now functus officio. That is, in the former matter, right? You have been given access, by the way, and that notice was put out in the newspaper for them to access servers in the so-called new election. In fact, IBC says you can now come, you appoint your agent who is going to have a direct access to that server. That is what they have advertised. It was there in the newspapers. They ought to have taken advantage of that proposal. That's number one. Number two, the reason why we have an election without nomination is on the basis of an advice that was given by the Supreme Court in 2013, and which advice has not been vacated. But be that as it may, whether we have nomination or we don't have nomination, the point is you must conduct election within 60 days. There is no way in the Constitution where there is a contemplation on how you can circumvent that. There is no way. Even this proposal, which, by the way, was alluded by the envoys, and which he also appears to be buttressing here, of going back to the Supreme Court and obtaining an extension, is not tenable in law. It is not tenable.
Yes, it is.
It is not tenable in law. Because,
yes, it is.
No, look here. You see the Constitution, you see Supreme Court or even judiciary, they do not have the power to make laws. They don't make constitutions. Their work is just to interpret. And when you have an express provision of the Constitution, they have no way of wiggling out of that provision. And that provision is, you nullify the election today, 60 days you must conduct an election. And from there on, then there is nothing else that And we do.
Okay. It is something the court will be ruling on today. It would be a good conversation to have after that ruling. But what would be more interesting for the Kenyan watching right now is for you, Senator Ledama, what happens on the 27th after voting has commenced, and finished? NASA didn't go to the election.
First of all, I can tell you this. There will be no voting in Kenya on the 26th. And we're asking all our supporters and Kenyans with sound mind not to go and vote. That's number one. Number two, we are calling upon Chebukati to be man enough and call off this election because Kenya is more important than being fixated on certain provisions of the law, which you interpret. Article 258 of the Constitution is very clear. The way the Constitution has got to be interpreted has got to be for the common good of the people. You are not going to destroy this country. What is going to happen on the 27th, and it's not something that I'm saying I will wish for it to happen, but there's going to be massive civil disobedience, which is within every Kenyan's right. Now, what happened? Let us just hypothetically say that in the coast region, they block everything, okay? Let's go to Kisumu. In Kisumu, it becomes difficult. We are not only going to be affecting Kenya, we are going to be affecting the region. We're going to be affecting landlocked states, which cannot access their products from the coast.
Oh, so you're planning to do... So you're planning chaos. You are planning chaos. No. You are planning chaos. You're talking of blocking. No. Why should we allow him to say that? You are proposing that we block roads, eh?
Right,
yeah, you are proposing chaos in this country and violence. No, it's very unfair.
Let's revisit what you just said.
You shouldn't allow him to get away with that. He is proposing chaos in this country.
If everything is blocked in the Nyanza region, President Uhuru Kenyatta during the Mashujaa Day speech said, we'll have respect for everybody. Those who do not want to vote will be respected. Stay home and don't vote. Those who want to vote will go out and do that. So what does it mean for NASA in respecting that constitutional right for those who do want to vote?
Michelle, the term that I used, and I hope that, and I'm sure Kenyans are watching, I said hypothetically, what if the coastal region decided that we are going to exercise their democratic right, they are going to cause massive civil disobedience on the 27th, they are going to block the coastal region? What would happen in Kisumu? What would happen in the landlocked states like Rwanda, Burundi, and even Uganda? In the sense,
so he's talking of chaos.
What I'm saying.
So these guys are planning chaos.
No. I think
it's very wrong.
I think Senator Kangata, it is wise for you to listen to what is coming out of my mouth. I am clearly saying, hypothetically, what if that happened? And that is the reason why I'm saying, I think right now, because of the current position which we are in this country, we have got to avert civil disobedience. We have got to safeguard the integrity of this country. We have got to protect the business interest of every single person in this country. Foreign interest, local interest. So the best thing to do is to call off this election, because assuming this election is not called off, Michelle, and only 2 million or 3 million people go and vote. If 10 million people voted, then there's no way that I could actually justify my claim in saying, call off this election. So the issue here is this. We are caught up in a situation whereby the Jubilee brigades are saying, we are not willing to talk because suppose we actually force our way through, we get this election, and we actually win with 10 million. Okay? Then what if we had spoken to them and we had called off the election? So really, we are put up in a situation, and for us, we're saying no. We know very well that we won the last election, and this time around, we do not want to be subjected to the same systems which denied us our victory.
All right. Let's just pause it there and take a short break, because both sides, Senator, really believe that they did win this previous election. When we come back, we'll be hearing from Senator Irungu Kangata from his stand. What will happen on the 27th if elections still remain on the 26th of October? This is The Political Point. Stay with us. The conversation continues in just a moment. At this point, we'd like to release our viewers watching us on KTN Home. Life and Style is coming up next. Good morning.